Let's start with a short video clip. I think we all need a little bit of change right now. So we'll start with a clip of what we are doing. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's one of our projects that is implemented by ICRAF and partners in West Africa. That's just one of the countries, Niger, that you are able to see in the clip. My name is Susan Chomba. I'm a social scientist at the Wild Agroforestry based in Nairobi. But I also manage that project, which is actually being implemented across 8 countries in Africa. So there's some action that is happening on the ground. Africa has the biggest restoration potential of all continents. 700 million hectares of land are in need of restoration in Africa. The bond challenge is 350 million hectares globally. Africa, we can restore that and still not even meet the need. It's only half of the degraded lands in Africa. But there's also a lot that is going on the ground. Today, I'm going to share some experiences from, please, my presentation. Some experiences from the ground on what's happening and how then, as we usher the decade of land ecosystem restoration, what are we learning and how can we accelerate the process of land restoration? Next slide, please. I'll break my talk by debunking 3 key myths about land restoration. Myth number 1, that we have simple magic bullets existing for land restoration. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but land restoration is a little bit more complex than simple magic bullets, and I'll tell you why. The photo with the degraded areas, that's Zai pits, that's half moons in Niger. That's soil and water conservation measures that is desperately needed in arid and semi-arid lands. The photo in the middle is a gentleman from Rwanda, northern Ghana, in our project site where we just trained grafting of some of the indigenous species that have been lost. But when it comes to restoration, they take very long. So farmers don't have the incentive to use them in landscape restoration. But with grafting, you can minimize the time that is required to regenerate those tree species from a period of even from 30 years to even 10 years, depending on the species. The photo to the last end, that's a technology that a lot of people in this room might be familiar with. Alan Chana, people in Evergreening Alliance Partnership. It's called Farmer-Managed Natural Regeneration. It's a technique that really helps us to restore semi-arid and arid areas where tree planting survival rates becomes very, very low because of moisture stress, because of roaming livestock, and other challenges. So it's not just about tree planting. There are series and different methods that we can restore land with, including social methods like governance issues, addressing aspects of livestock grazing that can be used to restore degraded lands. Slide number 2. My next myth I want to debunk is that as long as we are planting millions of trees with hands or drones, we will be fine. I think land restoration, it's about people. we've heard from previous speakers, we've heard from young generations. It's about people in as much as we can be able to capture their aspirations, their livelihood needs. The photo there in the middle is on our project site in Ethiopia. It's about talking about governance issues to manage landscapes, to manage grazing areas. The photo there on the end, that's actually me in northern Ghana again. It's about women, bringing women to the table or under a tree to discuss about land restoration, how they are being engaged, but also ensuring that they do get benefits from land restoration and that we are not adding another level of burden onto them, especially rural women who are already having a lot of activities to do. So how do we balance engaging them in activities on land restoration while not compromising and overburdening them with more responsibilities? The answers are within the local communities. We need to get down to the level. My last myth is that we can scale up land restoration through tiny projects scattered everywhere that do not bring anything together that is coherent. We need a landscape approach. The project that I'm talking about, Regreening Africa, those are the countries we are working in. In the East Africa, you can see Ethiopia, Somalia, Kenya, and Rwanda. And in West Africa, Niger, Mali, Senegal, and Ghana. We are learning that there's a lot of trade-offs and synergies within landscapes, and we need to bring those lessons in order to scale up restoration. Last slide. And in all of this, we need a paradigm shift. The paradigm shift in restoration is by embedding research in development. We've been working separately for very long. Research has got two key roles. One, helping us to match restoration approaches that are suitable for the context that we are working in. And secondly, is to generate hard evidence that fits in the hand of the policymaker. And so the policymakers can be able to make decisions based on evidence. Thank you.
Okay, another movie. Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Who is that guy? My name is Daniel Murdiarso. I'm with CIFOR. Are you feeling blue about restoration? Well, if you so, I'll take you a deep dive, not to this blue ocean, but to the blue carbon ecosystem. Next, please. So this term has been coined about 10 years ago to represent very unique ecosystem, seagrass meadows, salt marshes, and mangroves. They are very special. It's not been considered in many ways in many countries for a long time. But until 2013, when the UNFCCC asked the IPCC to develop the guideline to account for wetlands, including mangrove, and this ecosystem, then the science started to contribute on these processes. Both seagrass and salt marsh cover about 2 million hectares each, and less than 15 million hectares for mangrove. And they are a huge storehouse of carbon. So these three ecosystems store somewhere around 20 to 25 billion tons of carbon. Not only that, they are also buried carbon with a very high rate, 20 times than tropical forests. So this ecosystem is very crucial to forget, and we need to dive deeper to look at this very important ecosystem if we are talking about restoring, if we are talking about protecting the climate. Next, please. I do not want to go deeper now in terms of diving, but I want to bring you to deep cut of carbon emission using blue carbon ecosystem. With those amount and size of blue carbon, a lot of countries have opportunities to enhance the ambition of the nationally determined contribution mentioned by the DG of ICRAF. It's been few countries out of 175 countries mentioning blue carbon in their NDC, maybe 20 plus. But there are opportunities now when the NDC is going to be revised to include blue carbon. In my own countries, Indonesia, where a quarter of mangroves are located, this ecosystem has a very potential to reduce a lot. It's difficult to describe millions of tons, but by showing these figures, there will be 40 million less car or fewer cars on the road if we manage to conserve blue carbon. Next. So, more thing which is more fun here to look at the role of blue carbon ecosystem. If you conserve it very well, this cute creature, Bekantan, is an endemic species in Borneo. You won't have them if it is disturbed. The same thing for spoonbill. They are traveling, migrating. If you don't have mangrove in between, they might be starving. Next slide. This is another agenda that people have. Their livelihood very much rely on restored mangrove. Very healthy mangrove will sustain their livelihood, and if they are degraded, they really are starving. Next slide. So quoting the recent report from the Global Commission on Adaptation, we can see here that out of 5 items that can be used to restore or to adapt with the climate change, it's been mentioned in the morning about water, about infrastructure, about city, and now mangrove is mentioned, very topic that we are looking at. And with that, we can see that adaptation is very crucial. And there are more countries mentioning adaptation through blue carbon in the NDC. You still feeling blue? I hope not. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Lee Winawiki. I'm a soil scientist based at World Agroforestry in Nairobi, Kenya. And today I'll be talking about using data to implement and track restoration over time. So we've all heard that we need to implement on the ground. We need to work with farmers. Each country has their national commitments. We're here today because we are making an individual commitment as highlighted by Tony Simons, and a global commitment to restore degraded land. But there are key questions. What information, what data do we need to prioritize these land restoration actions? And then, what are the key indicators we need to monitor and be able to say how the restoration is impacting ecological resilience and social resilience? These are complex indicators we need to look at. At ICRAF, we have been devoting the last 15 years to establish a data-driven network, a global network that combines field monitoring with remote sensing. Each one of these black dots is actually a 100 square kilometer site. You can see a small bias in Africa, but we are expanding outside of Africa to really have a global monitoring network of key indicators of ecosystem health. So what can we do with these data? This is a recently published and available soil erosion map for the global tropics of incredible accuracy. These data can be used for global level assessments of crop modeling, climate modeling. We also can zoom in to Kenya to see where the hot spots, the yellow and the red, are at a finer spatial resolution for targeting restoration, and to allow these national commitments, governments, to report on how they're doing for restoring their degraded land. This network, however, allows us to zoom in even further so that we can look at the farm and household level. Each red dot is a project farmer implementing land restoration. This map is now at 30-meter resolution. But it's not just about soil erosion, which is a key indicator of degradation, but also, what about a positive indicator of soil organic carbon, a key indicator of land health? You can see this area in eastern Kenya, these drylands, low carbon, yellow. They're also very sandy, so they have a potential to store carbon, but not as high as other areas. And also, we need to look at how vegetation cover, such as systems of agroforestry, FMNR, are impacting. So this is a map of vegetation cover for 2017. Green is high. What are we seeing a lot of here? Brown. We're seeing a lot of brown here. If we go using this data-driven network, not only can we monitor what's happening now, we can also go back in time. This is 2000, less brown. And this was 1990. Even less brown and more green. So we can track over time. So Tony asked, what will be the difference of this decade? I think a big difference is that we have the data. We have the information to prioritize, to strategically implement, and then track our achievements over time. Thank you.
Another short video.
CIFOR-ICRAF scientist working on climate energy and low carbon development. This is one of the activity we are currently doing, restoring degraded peatland using agro-silvo fisheries, where we are growing agricultural crops, trees for biofuel and other biomaterials, and also fish for like local consumption. So land can be restored for food production, land can be restored for bioenergy, land can be restored for ecological values such as ecosystem services. So here I'm going to focus about bioenergy because the world needs renewable energy, so we cannot continue burning fossil fuels. And bioenergy is one of the alternatives that is widely available, most versatile and abundant, so it can be solid, can be liquid, and can be gaseous form. So this is two-thirds of the total renewable energy comes from bioenergy, but this is not free from any problem. Like if we don't manage or deploy the bioenergy system, it can be a problem, like whether we grow food or we grow energy or we protect the environment. But I am not talking here about those trade-offs, because as you can see in the video, the landscape can be restored for combined products, like we can have all three benefits in one landscape. And in the meantime, there's a big issue about whether we have enough land to grow biofuel that we need. But as you can see in other sides, so the world has a lot of degraded land, and we are talking about restoring 2 billion hectares of land as a part of ecosystem restoration. So if you use a different data, if we look at different data and sources, it can be as high as 6 billion hectares of degraded land. So part of this land can be used, as I've shown on the video, that can be food, energy, and environment conservation. Next slide, please. So this is actually we are currently doing the model. So looking the private and public funding to restore the degraded land. So using right trees in right landscapes with right business model and respecting people's right. That's the most important. So we can produce a variety of biomaterials and also ecosystem services, as the forest will remain as a permanent forest cover, because we are looking the tree species that can produce multiple values. We don't have to cut down the tree, we just harvest the seeds and for energy, and the tree remains in the landscapes and provide multiple values, which can contribute the climate and development goals. Next, please. So in conclusion, bioenergy can strengthen the economic incentives to private sector and also community groups to undertake restoration. And if we use our there are many principal criteria, indicators. If we try to go as a big social, economic, environment, there are numerous. But if we look at only 4R approach, right crops in right landscapes with right business model and respecting people's right, we should be all right in restoring our landscapes. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Frank, Susan, Lee, Daniel, and Himlal. I've been given the unenviable task to try and wrap up what these incredible people have just told you. And I'm going to try and do it quickly because you want to see my back here. I have just 3 messages for you. And those messages you must have heard out of these presentations. The first, and perhaps the most important message: embrace complexity. Einstein said, make things as simple as possible, but not simpler. And the role of science, as you've heard it from all of them, was to do exactly that, to make it simple, but not simplistic. The options you were presented were complex, but they were pragmatic. They were radical and transformative, but they are actionable. First message about complexity and the role of science. My second message to you is about restoration and adaptation. Both are a journey, not a destination. We are going to be doing this for generations as we adapt to changes and we restore. And let us then, therefore, base our decisions and our actions on the kinds of science, the kinds of evidence, the kinds of action you've just heard from those 5 speakers. And my final point coming from them is, and here in this room especially, we are far too comfortable. If there is anyone here in this room who came here not believing in restoration or adaptation or the need to act on climate change, please stand up. So we've been talking to ourselves, and I think we've got to stop doing that. And at the back of the room, Howard Shapiro reminds me all the time, we need unusual partnerships, and some of the younger people in the room have reminded us of that. And Tony Simon started it off this morning and said, we need individual action. Well, also at the back of the room, and I don't know why it's at the back of the room, sits Mr. Vijay Kumar, whose journey has been one of individual action. So let us leave this room with science, with evidence, and with the desire to get uncomfortable. Thank you very much.